Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Coaching the Bible. This is episode 205, season 4, episode 45. Our portion of the week is known as a portion called 𝗚𝗍𝗄, and our subject of the week is ungrounded leadership. Ungrounded leadership, I promise to explain as always. This is another concept that I think exists, but simply lack the terminology, perhaps, that we're going to apply to it today. Our win of the week, our learning of the week, we'll get to it in just a second. Hope you had an excellent week. As always, around the world, there's a ton going on. Here in Israel, of course, there's always a ton going on as we sort of continue to work through this war, now passing 322 days. I think today's 322 days since the war started on October 7th. And no end in sight, it feels like. But it does feel like we're in some sort of a weird holding pattern again, which is massively frustrating. As much as it is to say to put that aside, still aside, I hope you had an excellent week. I hope perhaps you had an opportunity, as it's late in the summer, to get a chance to breathe, a chance to rest, a chance to even get away. And I'm catching you at a moment when you are really chilled and relaxed. Our win of the week is simply that I'm feeling progress for myself in terms of the running. I did a 6K this morning. It wasn't my best effort, but found a new route which has been really good because it's a lot flatter than what I'm used to and consistent than I'm used to. But I got up to 6 today, which is good. So feeling like I'm progressing back to where I was before. I had that series of sinus infections earlier in the summer, and maybe we'll actually get somewhere meaningful with the running again. But I do feel progress. I do feel like we're getting somewhere. That's the win of the week. Learning of the week is simply this. When you're in the coaching and consulting game, ultimately, a lot of the work that has to get done, the success that actually is achieved, is not through your work. And so it does require you to be reliant to some degree on the people you're working with. You'll call them clients, call them allies, the people that simply are hopefully benefiting from your services and your skills and your expertise. And so you can get frustrated with it sometimes, and it's certainly the case that you can get frustrated with it, but you have to appreciate that that's what it is. And that you simply don't control all of it, or really any of it ultimately, and they have to do the work. And that sometimes is baby steps, sometimes it's just crawling, and sometimes they're sprinting and it's going and it's a certain thing, but you have to appreciate that that's the case, and you have to be able to position yourself to where you're pushing and directing traffic, even nudging, but also accepting of what the reality is. Okay. Getting to our topic of the week, grounded leadership. Grounded leadership is a term I'm going to use for a very specific kind of idea in terms of leadership, which I think is really important. As you're continuing to grow as a leader in whatever capacity that is, as we've always talked about, whether that's in your home, in your community, in your place of employment, whatever that may be, I think this idea of a grounded sort of version of leadership is really important. Whereas someone who is deeply visionary, someone who is in the sky, someone who has these grand, massive, beautiful ideas, can be charismatic, can be uplifting and inspirational, can provide hope for people. But if there's no grounded piece to it, you don't have very much. And what I mean that is, you can be visionary, you can be a disruptor, you can be an innovator, you can be an outside-the-box thinker, you can be all those things, and in so doing, you're pushing the boundaries of how people think about things and how they go, but it can't be everything. Great vision, or just simply beautiful words, isn't enough. It very much needs to be grounded in practical, in reality, in the possible, and in the doing of the work. And so, you want to be realistic, you want to be working in things that are achievable, you want to be sustainable over time, and so you can remember, you can think through situations of great leaders who had unbelievable ideas, and then ultimately crashed and burned. And so grounded leadership is sort of the antidote to that kind of idea. It sort of ensures that the vision that you have has an opportunity to turn into reality. This is this idea of grounded leadership, and admittedly, it's not a foreign concept, and it's not something that we don't know, but maybe it's not termed in that way. And what's really important to appreciate is that grounded leadership basically requires that you keep your feet on the ground, even though you have some sort of a sky-high vision about what it is that you're trying to do. So we can talk about, these grand missions that we might have in life, but we also have to appreciate that as much as we want to be aspirational and inspirational, we also have to be practical, and we actually have to do things and get things done. So that's what grounded leadership is. Grounded leadership is visionary but practical. It's ethically anchored, so your decisions are guided by core values and principles. You are rooted on the ground. You are rooted in ethics. You're rooted in values. You're rooted in principles. You're rooted in the practical. It's consistent and it's reliable, so you're building trust by following through on your commitments. It's grounded. It doesn't just simply fly high and just sort of disregard everything. It's incredibly empowering, I think, to be a grounded leader. Your team follows through. They have daily tasks and work that they have to get done that is attached directly to the larger vision, and they feel like they're an owner in what it is that they're doing, and it's very much open to the other voices that are around you. It's grounded in the reality that I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. I need help. There's team involved. To give you a practical example from my own life, recently I wrote a proposal for an organization, strategic proposal for an organization to run a fundraising project somewhere near the end of the calendar year. And they wanted different aspects of that work in the proposal. And I probably could have written them and gotten my way through it ultimately, but I didn't feel good about that. I need to stay grounded and rooted in what I know and what I can do and where I'm, say, an expert, quote unquote, rather than putting things out there that are high and beautiful and mighty, but aren't actually practical and real. So grounded leadership is these different things. It's also not, it's important to discuss what it isn't. It isn't some sort of detached idealism where someone is lost in their dreams and not grounded on the ground. It's not some sort of authoritarian kind of a thing where you're imposing your will on everybody else. The reality is you don't exactly know all the time what it is that you have to do. It's not reactive in any manner, right? This is a very proactive approach. So you're not just putting out fires as they arise. You are running through this situation. You are building as you're going. You are doing and not waiting around for everything to happen to you. So therefore, you're not complacent and you're not simply sort of holding ground. You're going, you're moving, and you're going forward. At the same time that all those things are happening, you are practical and you are risk-minded and you are paying attention to the risks that are out there, but you're not exceptionally cautious either. You're going to take calculated risks as they come up because they're going to help you succeed at a much higher level. So it's really important to appreciate what this idea of grounded leadership is versus what it isn't. You can think about people in your mind who are not grounded leaders, right? People who do live in the hope, they live in the vision, but they simply can't get it to execute. Practical example from my own life as well. Working on a project recently, it was a newsletter project, and where we got the content of the newsletter done, we got stuck on who the audience of the newsletter was, and therefore the newsletter actually never went out. So it got a little practical, but when we realized that the systems aren't in place or the trajectory of what we're trying to do isn't clear, we're going to hit stumbling blocks and we're going to hit bottlenecks and we're going to get stuck. So it's really important to appreciate it. And here's a great quote. You might hear this one again today, but for the moment, it's a Japanese proverb which I saw, which is this: vision without action is a daydream. Action without vision is a nightmare. And I think that this is really powerful. Grounded leadership ensures that you're not just dreaming, but that you're doing. And that you're doing it in a way that's sustainable, meaningful, and impactful all at the same time. So what are we trying to accomplish by being grounded? Really important. We're trying to achieve not just sort of, explosive instant success and then never sort of, one-hit wonder kind of a thing, but much more sort of in a sustainable, ongoing success. We don't want to be a flash in the pan. We don't want to be a one-hit wonder. We don't want to be somebody who's remembered for that one moment in time when they actually succeeded at a high level. We want something that's enduring, that's lasting, that is consistently and sustainably impactful on the work that we're doing. Goal number 2 here is maintaining a very high level of ethical integrity. Grounded leadership is very much about what is best for business, what is best for the people, what is best for society, and what's best not just in the short term, but it is very much thinking about the long term. The goal number 3 in terms of grounded leadership is balancing the vision with the reality. This is a really core piece of it, and maybe the most fundamental piece of what we're trying to do. We want to shoot for the moon. We always talk about the moonshot idea. President Biden has that idea, the moonshot idea of curing cancer. It's massive, it's huge, but like if you don't have, the rocket fuel to get to the moon, if you don't have the rocket, if you don't have the plans, so then you got nothing. And so balancing the vision with the reality is really, really important. And so these are the things that actually make us really successful. And in terms of this idea of a grounded leader, think about this. If somebody said about, what about that person? What about John at the office? What about him? And they say, oh, John's a really grounded leader. Or they talk about, Sue, right? Sue's the COO of the company. What about Sue? Sue's a very grounded leader. What does that mean she's a grounded leader? This is a person who has, big visions and big dreams. They think in the big, but they act in the small. They're attaching the immediate short-term goal with the longer-term vision, and they don't get lost in something that's out there. They don't simply impose their will. So this is how we go. Because you're trying to get to an ultimate place, you appreciate that you don't have all the steps in line at the moment, and so you're iterating and you're improving and you're going and you're working forward. And so very importantly, as that idea is, this is how we appreciate being a very specific leader. I don't think necessarily people love to be viewed as a grounded leader, but because I think that people want to think about the high and the mighty and the visionary, but you want to get stuff done. And so the people who get stuff done are very much grounded in reality, even if they're pushing the limits of that reality and they're pushing the ends at which that reality can actually reach. They're grounded, they're rooted on here, they're focused, they're pushing, and they're going forward. The reason this comes up for me in terms of the Bible and how this comes into the Bible, because we're 12 and a half minutes in and I haven't mentioned the Bible at all, was I got a sense in reading this week's portion that Moses is very much a grounded leader in a very specific way here this week. What I mean by that is Moses very much is the teacher. He's also obviously the one who's bringing down these very high and meaningful principles and ideas and values and ethics for life and the world, and they're big and they're monumental and they're world-altering and they're pillars of the universe. But if you think about Moses for just a second also, he provides an incredible reality check for the people at this moment. They're 40 years in the desert. Their life in the desert for most of that time has been a dream. It's been a honeymoon. Think about, they have all their food taken care of. They have their physical needs taken care of in every way. The Bible tells us that their clothing grew with them, that they were wrapped in this cloud. They were protected and everything. It was amazing, amazing life. It's a honeymoon experience for 40 years. And now the tough reality check has to come into play. And something that you're not necessarily want to hear, which is the truth about how this is going forward. And so the shift from honeymoon phase to reality phase and coming back to going to work that first year after you're married, or that first week after you finished celebrating your wedding, right? That idea, now it's reality check. And so Moses sets into a series of reality checks. This is not what comes up later on in the Bible or earlier, which is a sort of a rebuke session, although there's a little bit of that here. But it's sort of a tough love moment. These are tough realities that Moses is sharing with them that they need to hear as they stand on the cusp of going into the land. Going into land isn't going to be easy. Going into the land isn't going to be simple. Going into the land isn't going to be a, dream-like lifestyle that they have now. It's going to be hard. It's going to be work. It's going to be different than what they've experienced either when they were in Egypt or their time in the desert. And that reality check is hugely important. And that reality check keeps the people grounded, which makes Moses, as much as he's this covenantal all-time leader, is also incredibly on the ground on a certain level in terms of reality. So reality check number one, here I'm just going to share a couple of them, is Moses reminds the people that God's blessings aren't guaranteed. They're conditional on their obedience. They're conditioned on their following the biblical precepts, the commandments, living an ethical life, connecting, clinging, believing in God. Really important reality check number one. Reality check number two, there are dangers in prosperity. Hugely important factor. Person suddenly thinks that they have achieved a massive level of prosperity. They have land, and maybe they have, in this case, cattle, and they have family, and everything is great. It can become complacent. A person can begin to believe their own fiction and their own hero story about who they are. Reality check number three is a memory of past failures, reminding the people that they have made mistakes before, and perhaps that they might make more, but they should try to avoid them into the future. These are really power reality checks that are made to keep the people grounded, level-headed, and focused on where it is that they're going into the future. A call for humility, incredible reality check for the people. So, and the last one, of course, perhaps here, is simply just the effort required in settling the land. They're not going in a parade, and they're not going in where everything is going to be handed to them in an easy fashion. They're going to have to work. They're going to have to fight. They're going to have to go to war. They're going to have to rely on God. They're going to have to do all the things that maybe they don't want to do, don't feel like they should have to do to get the job done. It's not handed to them on a silver platter by any stretch of the imagination, and it takes a long time. So Moses is grounding the people in the sense of reality at the same time that he keeps them focused on the bigger goal. So really important, great quote I saw from Winston Churchill: the further backward you can look, the further forward you are likely to see. So Moses taking them back, reminding them of past failures, talking about humility, Moses talking about the hard work, talking about that this is not going to be a silver platter situation, is incredibly powerful and incredibly meaningful and incredibly grounding for what it is that's necessary for the people. And so there's just how grounded leadership works. Now, the underpinnings of grounded leadership, I think, are pretty obvious, right? We want to be motivated. We want to be focused on success. We want to succeed. And so when we're stuck in the high ideal vision without any way of actually knowing how to actualize, can be frustrating, but can be debilitating, because a person at that point simply doesn't know where to go. So by staying grounded, thinking big, acting small, and attaching the pieces together to get to the bigger picture, to the bigger goal, actually feels better for somebody. There's a sense of accomplishment, a sense of confidence, a sense of growth, a sense of security and stability in a certain sense, because we want to be consistent and we want to be active and we want to be know that there's reliable results that are coming as we're going. So there's some real basics that are here at the core of this. And so we have to keep this in mind as we go. So, the examples that I made up at the beginning about, the two people at a company who are grounded leaders, really powerful. But let's take it into your world. So let's say you run a nonprofit, right? And you have to tackle some sort of a new issue. So you're working in a certain kind of space, with underprivileged communities, and suddenly there is an economic hit, and homelessness, let's say, becomes a big issue, right? Okay, so you want to do something in your city related to around it about homelessness, and you have this big, bold vision about what it is that you want to accomplish: funding home building, getting people jobs, moving people into a space where they're no longer vulnerable. How do you do that? So the big high vision is beautiful and wonderful, but you got to get people doing something. You got to get people active. And so you get them active by reorganizing and refocusing their vision onto the ground and to the practical steps that are needed to take place to actually get something done. And so you'll focus maybe on one community, so you'll slim it down a little bit. You'll focus on one aspect of the work that needs to be done. Maybe it's the educational piece, something like that, right? And then as you go and you build one win to the next and you connect the two by bridging wins together and by collecting wins, you're building that momentum and you're building credibility and also you're building success. So the high vision is starting to come into view because you are doing the small things at the lower level, right? And so by being incredibly reliable, but also by being very grounded, you get yourself into a position to actually succeed and do a really, really good job. And so it's really important. I have this whole framework here, but I see the clock. I'm already at 20 minutes plus, and I want to focus. It's called the focus framework. Obviously, every week there's a framework. We want to keep that framework connected to what it is that we're trying to do. And the focus framework allows you, as much as you want to dream and believe in the high, it allows you to sort of slim down and zoom in on the specifics of what it is that you're trying to do. And so the focus framework is this. Focus is foundations, ownership, connection, unity, strategy. So foundations, really quickly, establish and revisit your core values and your vision regularly. This ensures that everything you're doing is aligned with what truly matters. So your foundations, the pillars, the core of who you are and what you're trying to do. Ownership is empowering the team by linking their roles and their goals directly to the larger vision. So you are in marketing. This is what you're doing. This is how what you're doing connects into what the company is doing writ large. But also you in marketing, you're connected to accounting in the following way, and you're going to maybe collaborate on the following project, and those two things together connect up. Your ability as a leader to connect all those dots makes you massively powerful and successful, and also builds an incredible amount of trust with the team, and they're motivated to go forward. So foundations, ownership, connection. You want people to communicate, you want people to give feedback, you want people to talk, you want people to be heard, you want people to feel valued. That's connection. Unity is number 4. Building a unified team working towards that common vision. Getting people into the space of collective success comes by virtue of having collective vision, where people either have the same vision or people buy into the bigger vision that you are presenting. And last but not least, certainly not least, is strategy. Developing and implementing a very clear, vision-aligned strategy. The grounded leader has a plan, but they also have flexible, adaptable approaches to the things that are coming. They're not rigid in that way. They're looking at the bigger picture. They're trying to get there, and sometimes it's straight, and sometimes they have to go around. And they're humble enough to accept when they don't know, and willing enough to accept when it doesn't go right, to change course to ultimately get to where they want to go. And so that focus framework, very powerful. That last piece, strategy, the most important. Tying the short-term immediate goals and tasks to the larger picture, the larger vision, so you can see the 30, 60, 90-day wins. However you build that, however you structure that, actually gets you to the success that you want. And so this is really important. This is grounded leadership. Again, people may not love the term. They may not love to be viewed as a grounded leader. I would take it every day of the week if it got me the success that I was trying to get to. Let's finish out with a quote for Coaching the Bible this week. To the person who does not know where he wants to go, there is no favorable wind. That is a quote from Seneca. That is Coaching the Bible for this week. I look forward to seeing you next week. I wish you and everyone around you a wonderful, wonderful weekend and an incredible week ahead.